Have you ever wondered what happens when violence ceases to be just an act and becomes art etched into the flesh itself? Imagine entering a cold cell, where silence is not just an absence of sound, but a dense, almost suffocating presence. Standing before you is a man whose skin tells stories that would make most mortals recoil. He doesn't need to speak. Every line, every tattooed symbol, every cut and scar is a silent confession, a warning that evil can be carved and displayed. Can you feel the weight of the empty gaze that pierces the cell? It's as if the abyss itself has decided to stare at you. Marks etched on the skin, echoes of crimes that time has failed to erase. Kais Veovis, with his countenance reminiscent of an incarnation of the devil himself, already chose his image even before his hands were stained with blood. He molded fear, sculpted intimidation, and transformed himself into a presence that dominates any space with his mere appearance. And we're not talking about a costume. These are implants, tattoos, symbols of dark beliefs that not only shock but also announce a mind capable of the incomprehensible. Does the thought send a chill down your spine? As you try to process this presence, another name emerges: Wade Wilson. No, not the fictional hero. This Wade has etched hatred and supremacy into his own face, a history of violence that has become visible to everyone who crosses his path. Each tattoo, each mark, is a manifesto of his disturbed mind, a narrative of cruelty unfolding in human tissue. And even in prison, his image continues to speak louder than any words. Have you ever wondered how far the human mind can go when skin becomes the stage for a dark ideology? And then there's Nico Jenkins, whose own body has been transformed into an altar to his distorted beliefs. 666 on his forehead, attempts to reshape body parts to resemble serpents, a visual commitment to a deity of chaos that few dare comprehend. Violence is not just action, but ritual, a macabre theater where the suffering of others intertwines with his own bodily expression. What you'll discover now may surprise you, because here the boundaries of insanity and aesthetics blur. Jaime Osuna, the man of 1,000 faces, brings the next chapter in this ongoing nightmare. A face that transforms, a tattooed Joker's smile, a pentagram on the forehead, and you realize that the appearance is no longer human. Every crime committed, every victim, is recorded not only in the world's memory, but in the very flesh that moves before you. It's an escalation of terror that defies any notion of normality. And as we breathe in this air thick with fear and curiosity, it becomes clear that we're not just talking about crimes, but about a secret language written in skin and blood, a universe where tattoos are the signature of evil. Each of these men carries with them not only stories of violence, but a visual spectacle that amplifies their presence and creates an aura of intimidation that persists even behind bars. And now, do you feel the weight of the tension? What follows isn't just another story. It's an even deeper descent, a journey into the darkest corners of the human mind, where each tattoo reveals secrets most would never dare to look at. And so, without warning, we prepare to cross the line that separates brutality from macabre art, and the door to the unknown opens. As you delve deeper into this universe of shadows, you begin to realize that these stories don't exist simply to scare. They exist to remind us how evil hides, transforms, and reinvents itself. And if you feel this journey is important, that every detail, every face, every tattoo tells something you'll never forget, then there's a way to ensure you don't miss anything yet to come. Subscribing to the channel isn't just a click. It's being part of something bigger. It's allowing these stories to continue reaching you, allowing the most disturbing secrets to find someone who is truly attentive, who understands the depth of what we're revealing. Each subscription is a guarantee that you'll be on the next step, in the next cell, facing the next mind the world would rather never know. And as you decide whether to stay or not, remember, the next stories will cross boundaries you can't yet imagine. There are layers hidden in the darkness that only those who follow each episode will be able to see. So, if you want to continue this journey into the unknown, if you want to feel firsthand the weight of each crime, each body, each face, this is where it begins, now with you. Click to subscribe. Be part of this community that isn't afraid to gaze into the abyss. Because what comes next will stir your mind, challenge your certainties, and show that fear, obsession, and mystery still have chapters in store for those who dare to follow. And meanwhile, the story isn't over. There are still doors to be opened, secrets to be uncovered, and you'll want to be here right when the next shadow appears. Kais Veovis. Kais Veovis. The name whispers in the air like a dark promise, each syllable charged with intent and malice. The close-up of his most disturbing tattoo shows a demon etched into his skin, horns extending from his forehead, eyes that seem to peer through time, as if each glance could probe his soul. This mark isn't just ink, it's a mirror of the mind, a revelation of what lies within, of what he chose to show the world without asking permission. Marks like these don't appear by chance. They are the reflection of choices, of a mindset shaped by the silence, isolation, and pain he absorbed from an early age. Born in a small town where anonymity weighed like a sentence, Kais learned early on that fear could be cultivated. The boy who was ignored by his neighbors, who felt the world mock his weaknesses, began to observe. He observed gestures, looks, movements that could be converted into control. Every street fight, every small act of violence in childhood was not just a reaction, it was training. A silent learning about power, about how the body and presence can be weapons as sharp as a hidden blade. As adolescence approached, his transformation began to materialize. His hair began to fall out in strange patterns, tattoos appeared on his arms, symbols only he understood, and with each mark he seemed to carve his own legend. His peers saw a boy, but it was a mask he let on. Behind it, his mind worked on strategies, calculating every psychological effect of his decisions. Kais learned to anticipate fear, to manipulate space, to use his body as a warning. It wasn't just crime, it was performance, it was raw storytelling. The first major event that changed everything happened during his youth, when he became involved with the Hells Angels. It was more than a gang, it was a stage, and he was a horror artist. The first time he participated in an attack, he didn't just observe. He planned, choosing gestures that amplified the horror, and the execution wasn't just about the act itself, but about the impact it would leave. Each victim became a chapter, each crime a signature. His skin, now covered in implants and tattoos reminiscent of hell, functioned as both a warning and a manifesto. It was a mind that understood that image and action feed off each other, that the presence of a being can shape the fear of others more powerfully than any words. The psychological impact Kais had wasn't limited to the streets. Every look, every gesture, every calculated crooked smile was designed to destabilize. The dissonance between his demonic appearance and the calm with which he carried out his actions created an aura impossible to ignore. Police officers, witnesses, fellow gang members, they were all pieces on a board he dominated before he even entered the room. There was a quiet pleasure in control, an almost artistic satisfaction in observing people's reactions to what he had chosen to reveal about himself. By the time the crimes that marked his trajectory came to light, Kais's mind was already the stuff of legend. The Pittsfield triple murder wasn't just violence, it was choreography. Every step, every mutilation, every word spoken while committing the acts reflected the conscious choice of a man who transformed brutality into language. He understood that violence didn't have to be merely physical, it could be psychological, spiritual, ritualistic. His mindset knew no conventional boundaries. He saw life and death as elements of a narrative he wrote himself, and the hidden truth of what drove him was only revealed between the lines of each action, each mark, each implant he chose to carry. As you observe this transformation, you realize that nothing in the real or imagined world could come close to such absolute control. Kais deliberately chose to sculpt his body and mind for impact. Every decision, from tattoos to acts of cruelty, reveals a mind where evil and art merge, a psychology where fear and respect coexist as instruments of power. It's not just crime, it's study, it's discipline, it's obsession, and each revelation about it takes us deeper, into a spiral of understanding that defies comfort and forces us to face the hidden truth behind what we call monstrosity. And as we delve deeper into Kais's life, you begin to realize that what appears to be a modified body or a disturbed mind is only the surface. There are decisions, there are traumas, there are lies that intertwine with reality, and each new detail, each fragment of revelation, leads us to a place where the line between malice and intent becomes almost invisible, and where his next choice, his next gesture, his next secret, is yet to come. The smell of metal burned the air that night. Kais Veovis walked silently through the deserted streets, the tattoo on his forearm, now red and swollen, pulsing as if it had a life of its own. It wasn't just ink, it was a pact, a memory, a warning. Each line carried the weight of a decision made, of a hidden truth he kept for himself and for the world, and in that moment, every passing glance, every shadow that moved, was watched by eyes that knew the darkness within. The night seemed to yield to his presence, as if the world itself were aware that something was about to happen. The crime began almost like a ritual. A secluded apartment, the distant sound of sirens that would never arrive in time, and a victim who didn't understand she'd been chosen to be part of a larger scheme. Kais moved calmly, almost gracefully, as if rehearsing each gesture. His tattoos, scattered across his body, reflected every emotion he wanted to convey: hatred, contempt, dominance. In the broken mirror on the wall, he observed his own transformation. no longer a teenager at the mercy of the world, but a presence that commanded impact, a mind that dictated fear and respectability at the same time. The sound of the final blow echoed through the apartment, heavy and deliberate. Kais whispered a phrase, a mantra he would repeat later at trial. "What's inside me isn't human, it's eternal." It wasn't just violence, it was communication. Every act carried symbolism, every gesture a signature that could not be erased. The blood tattoo on his forearm seemed to vibrate with the tension of the moment, absorbing the intensity of the crime, becoming an extension of his own body, a mark that would tell stories to anyone brave enough to look closely. The behind-the-scenes details of the crime, which would later come to light during the investigation, reveal a mind obsessed with detail. Every step inside the apartment was calculated, every displaced object created confusion, disorientation, and an impression that would take investigators a long time to decipher. Kais's mindset brooked no improvisation, it was choreography. Every decision made in the heat of the moment reflected a cold, almost obsessive discipline, and the impact extended far beyond the victim. It affected family members, neighbors, gang members, and even authorities. Everyone, in some way, was pulled into the spiral he unconsciously created, part of the same game he manipulated. The trial brought even more revelations. Kais, seated in the courtroom, gazed at the jurors with disturbing calm, and every word he spoke seemed calculated to maximize psychological effect. "There is no regret here. Only understanding of what I am capable of," he said, and the room shook. The tattoo on his left arm, the one with a fiery-eyed demon, was mentioned by the prosecutor as a symbol of his brutality, like a manifesto etched on his skin, a silent testament to what the human mind can conceive when freed from moral constraints. It's at this point that horror begins to intertwine with fascination. Every detail of Kais's escalating crimes reveals not just violence, but transformation. He became an organism that used body, mind, and image to project impact, a machine of calculated decisions, where each choice was part of a larger pattern, a narrative he himself constructed. The audience begins to realize that the terror he instills lies not only in his visible acts, but in the realization that the human mind can be shaped by obsession, trauma, and ambition. Each new victim wasn't just a number, it was a piece completing a psychological puzzle only he could comprehend. The blood spilled, the marks left, the repeated gestures, all part of a cruel choreography, a sequence of decisions that revealed a hidden truth, that the mind, when conditioned by pain, isolation, and the need for control, can transform acts into symbols and symbols into living narratives. As you absorb every detail of this specific crime, you begin to understand that the tattoo is not just a reminder but an active part of the act. It communicates hatred, pact, and intentions, and each line of ink is like an extension of Kais's brutality. There is no separation between man and monster, between decision and impact, between what is seen and what remains hidden behind the scenes. Each revelation about him creates a growing tension, a silent anxiety, as if something is yet to come, waiting to be discovered, to shake once again the perception of what is real and what is impossible. And so, as the night wears on and the echo of the crime still vibrates in the walls and in the minds of those who watch, the story of Kais Veovis continues to unfold, each action connecting to the next, each tattoo, each decision, each detail increasing the suspense, without ever allowing the full truth to be revealed immediately, keeping the spiral of mystery alive, pulsing, inviting you to go deeper, to understand what the human mind can create when freed from all its constraints. The silence in the courtroom was heavy, almost suffocating, as if every seat was filled with the same air he breathed in the darkened room of the crime. Kais Veovis remained motionless, his eyes fixed on some invisible point ahead, and the tattoo on his left forearm, the one that seemed to burn with memories of blood and hatred, shone in the cold light of the room. The sentence came like a sharp, inevitable blow. 30 years later, a lifetime told in numbers that could never convey the true impact of his decisions. There were no screams, no histrionic tears, just the weight of reality echoing in every face present, and the silent awareness that nothing there would erase what he had done. The press reacted like a contained storm. Flashbulbs, headlines, photographs that captured every detail of Kais's impassive face, every curve of the tattoo that had now become a public mark, a recognizable symbol of terror. In newspapers and on television screens, that tattoo ceased to be just a drawing on the skin. It became a warning, a reminder of what the human mind can conceive when morality is cast aside. The victims' families, even from a distance, felt his presence more intensely than any condemnation could impose, as if the very air carried fragments of his actions. In the courtroom hallway, Kais walked with steady steps, each movement calculated, each breath measuring its effect on those watching. For him, every glance was part of the impact his presence still exerted. Each step reverberated like the beat of a drum, a cadence that recalled the backstage of a mind that transformed every detail into a narrative, every decision into power. He was not merely condemned, he was the living tension itself, a force that needed no words to be understood, only attentive gazes and silent fear. The interviews that followed, recorded and distributed, revealed a man who spoke little, but whose silence said more than any explanation could. "I know what I did," he said firmly, looking directly into the camera, and in that moment, the tattoo seemed to tremble, vibrate, echoing every blow he had struck, every act that had shaped his own transformation. For the public, for behavior analysts, for those who studied the psychology behind crime, this was more than a story of violence. It was a study in impact, a stark exposure of how decisions, when combined with a singular and obsessive mindset, can generate consequences that transcend any courtroom. In prison, the tattoo went from being merely a personal memento to a public mark. Other inmates regarded it as if facing a living legend, and guards reported feeling a silent tension as they passed by him. Each line of ink, each stroke, carried the memory of acts no one dared replicate, and at the same time, it was a constant warning. Terror doesn't end with sentencing. It spreads through the impact that a man's presence and story can generate. Kais transformed his body into a bastion of his own narrative, and each gesture, each look, reinforced the hidden truth that society tried to ignore. The behind-the-scenes look at prison life reveals even more of the character's complexity. He studied, observed, and manipulated small situations as if they were chess pieces. The transformation the crime had wrought in his mind didn't end with his sentence. It intensified with every decision he made behind bars. The mindset that had previously focused on carrying out violent acts now focused on building a presence that maintained the same psychological impact on the environment around him. Every interaction, every small choice, carried the same narrative force as the crimes, and the tattoo, ever visible, was a constant reminder that nothing he had done could be forgotten. Families, journalists, curious onlookers, all were drawn by the aura of mystery that still hung over him. Each account, each eyewitness's memory reinforced the sense that Kais Veovi's story wasn't just about crimes and punishments, but about the complete transformation of a human being into a symbol, a warning, a living reminder that the impact of our decisions often extends far beyond what we can measure. The hidden truth, the one that only reveals itself in the subtlest details, began to reveal itself little by little, in the looks on his cellmates' faces, in the conversations he overheard, in the answers he observed but didn't offer. And as he walked the prison corridors, the world outside continued to struggle to understand. Each tattoo, each mark, each gesture became a story within another, revealing that the brutality of his actions lay not only in the act itself, but in the way they shaped collective perception, the emotional impact, the narrative that spread beyond physical confinement. Kais was a living presence, and his every move was a silent reminder that a man's true influence doesn't end when he's imprisoned. It perpetuates, reverberates, transforms all who come into contact with the shadow he cast. And so, as the sentence became reality and the tattoo went from intimate secret to recognized symbol, the story found no end. Every detail, every behind-the-scenes story, every revelation remained in suspense, as if something were yet to emerge from the shadows, something that would connect past and present in a spiral of mystery and tension, leaving the impression that the true extent of Kais Veovi's impact could not yet be fully understood, but was about to reveal itself in ways no one imagined. As you feel the weight of this story, the echo of each decision, each tattoo that becomes a warning, there is something only you can do now. Write in the comments a word that summarizes what this story provokes in you: fear, anger, disbelief, perhaps silence. It's not just a gesture, it's an outpouring, a space where your reaction matters. Because here, between each look and each line of ink, your voice connects to the shadow he left, to the memory that insists on lingering. Have you ever felt like you're carrying a secret that can't be told? Of feeling the tension of something no one around you can understand? Then write in the comments. Make this space a reflection of what the court, the media, and even time cannot erase. Every word you write becomes part of what we're building together, as if each solitary confession became a piece in the same story. Don't think this is just curiosity or entertainment. It's deeper. Your comment, your simple gesture, helps keep alive the continuity of this delve into the mind, memory, and brutality that transforms someone into a symbol of impact. This is where we create connection, where we show that what happened isn't just history, but a shared experience, a perception that reverberates, a memory that doesn't dissolve. So type that word you can't forget. That feeling that screams inside. Because each comment builds invisible bridges, connecting you to the narrative, to the shadows, to the hidden truth yet to be revealed. It's the first step to becoming part of what comes next without needing to say anything else. Just write. Just feel. Just participate. And see how, even in the silence, this story continues to grow, breathe, preparing the ground for what will yet emerge from the abyss we've only just begun to explore. Within the cold prison walls, he refused to let time erase his presence. Every corridor, every cell, seemed to carry the whisper of his reputation, and the tattoo that was once just ink on his skin became a living symbol, something that echoed louder than any sentence written on paper. Those who crossed his path didn't just look at a man. They looked at the shadow he'd left, at the silent threat that moved behind the empty eyes and the mouth that rarely spoke more than necessary. His every gesture carried determination, every silence, a strategy. Life after conviction wasn't just about survival. It was a way to control fear, to command respect, to create a legend that others would accept as indisputable truth. The tattoo now was not just ink. It had become a mirror of the mind, a narrative that spoke without words, a warning tattooed on the walls of everyone's mind. Some regarded it with reverence, others with horror, but no one remained indifferent. The impact it caused, the effect it had on those who sought power, on those who wished to challenge the order, transformed every corridor of the penitentiary into a stage of constant tension. Every decision he made, every slightest movement, was watched, analyzed, interpreted as if it were part of a survival ritual, a silent dance of control and fear. And it is here that hidden truths begin to reveal themselves slowly, almost imperceptibly. Behind the bars, amid the shadows of the courtyard and the creaking of the iron doors, small twists and turns emerge. Unlikely allies, enemies who become observers, fragile alliances that could crumble at any moment. Every gesture, every word, every look is laden with meaning, with stories no one outside will ever know, behind the scenes of a life that becomes legend. The decisions that seemed isolated were actually pieces of a larger puzzle, of a calculated strategy that only he fully understood. Stay with me until the end. Because what you're about to discover isn't just about crimes or tattoos, it's about the transformation of a man into a myth, about how the mind can manipulate reality within a space where every second seems to last an eternity. Stay with me until the end, and you'll see how each revelation, each detail of what unfolds within these walls, changes our perception of fear, power, and survival. It's not just about looking at the tattoo, it's about understanding the impact it carries, the effect it leaves on those who dare cross its path, and how the mindset of a convict can create truths that endure even beyond the life we know. Within this oppressive environment, the man who once seemed merely a physical threat now becomes the architect of his own legacy. Other prisoners begin to follow the signs, interpreting each mark on their skin as if it were a secret code, as if each gesture contained invisible instructions to understand the game, to survive. There are those who approach with respect, those who back away in fear, and those who observe in silence, waiting for the legend to fully reveal itself, one step at a time. It is the power of a presence that transcends the flesh, that becomes a story told in the shadows, in the corridors and cells where time slowly rots. And even within this context, life doesn't stop. Small conflicts arise, decisions must be made, alliances shift, and each step can have irreversible consequences. The transformation that occurs there is not just physical, but mental, a silent metamorphosis that no one outside that cell could fully comprehend. The legacy of fear, the aura of legend, all of it is constructed in silence between the impact of each action and the perception of others. It's in this space that you begin to realize that every tattoo, every mark, every gesture is a key to understanding the man behind the legend, and that what's about to emerge from the shadows still carries much more than simple horror. As the days drag on, it's impossible not to notice how this presence shapes the prison's dynamics. What began as a sentence has become a living narrative, an experiment in power and survival, and every decision made within reverberates beyond what we can see. A man's mindset, his transformation, his strategic choices, and even the way his tattoo is perceived by others create a web of mystery and tension that has no easy end. Stay with me until the end. Because every second that passes, every detail that emerges, reveals layers you never imagined existed. And it's in this play of shadows, between hidden truths and real impact, that the story continues, ready to expose what it truly means to live and survive, under the mark of a legacy no one would dare challenge. The prison routine seemed to swallow everything around him, but within every movement, every tense silence, he continued to weave his own narrative of control and fear. The corridors creaked, the iron doors creaked, But none of this disturbed the calculated rhythm of someone who understood the value of patience and impact. Every gesture was studied, every word measured, and the tattoo on his arm, now more than ever, served as a silent signature, a mark that transcended the skin and took root in the minds of all who dared observe him. There, the transformation was not just of body but of mind. Every decision, however small, carried a ripple effect, reverberating through the prison's dynamics and the stories that circulated behind the scenes. His presence provoked something that could not be ignored, a mixture of fascination and repulsion, fear and curiosity. Some prisoners sought closer contact, trying to decipher the invisible codes of his mind, while others retreated, recognizing a hidden truth that no one outside that space could comprehend. It was the silent power of someone who had decided to transform every moment into a piece of strategy, every look into a threat, every silence into a lesson in survival. The tattoo, which initially seemed merely a mark of hatred or a reminder of past crimes, now became the narrative of a life that refused to be forgotten, proof that a man's impact depends not on the outside world, but on what he can project even while imprisoned. And it's at this point that one realizes how complex the prison's behind-the-scenes reality is, revealing the interplay between power, fear, and reputation. Every story that emerged, every whisper about what he had done or his mindset, contributed to a kind of silent cult. Internal and external transformations occurred in parallel. He adapted to his surroundings, learning to manipulate others' perceptions, while other inmates, unconsciously or deliberately, became pieces within the very chessboard he had created. The decisions he made weren't just about physical survival, but about leaving a mark, about building a legacy of impact that no one could ignore. Within this dynamic, small incidents took on exaggerated proportions. A seemingly trivial argument, a glance exchanged at the wrong time, a word spoken in front of people who shouldn't have heard, all became part of a tapestry of tension, of gradual revelations that kept everyone on edge, always expecting something to explode. His mind operated like a silent mechanism, calculating consequences, analyzing patterns, transforming the environment into a laboratory of strategy and control. And as the legend grew, the tattoo, every line and shadow etched into his skin, became the most visible symbol of this dominance, an emblem of the chaos he left in his wake. And yet, even with his reputation cemented, there was something greater, something that could not be fully predicted: the effect on those who observed him. The transformation of mentality was not limited to him. It reverberated throughout the others, forcing each inmate to confront their own decisions, their own hidden truths. Some gave in to fear, others to admiration, and a few, more daring, sought to understand the method behind the impact, trying to anticipate movements, decipher codes, and survive. The environment thus became not just a physical prison, but a microcosm of psychological study, of power and vulnerability, of actions whose consequences spread like invisible waves. It is at this point that one realizes the value of remaining attentive, of understanding every detail, of observing not only what is visible, but also what is hidden between shadows and gazes. Because every small action within that cell carried the potential for transformation, every gesture could become a catalyst for chaos or control, and every tattoo, every mark, every scar told a story that was far from over. And as he walked the corridors with measured steps and a steady gaze, it was impossible not to feel that his legacy was just beginning. The stories he left behind were not mere memories of terror. They were seeds of impact, provoking reflections on decisions, mindsets, and the hidden truth that no one outside the prison could fully decipher. The behind-the-scenes stories that unfolded within were a silent invitation to delve deeper, to understand the game unfolding, layer by layer, revelation by revelation. If that man tattooed hatred on his face, the next has transformed his entire body into an offering to chaos. Every detail of the next story promises to go further, carrying with it the intensity, impact, and transformation that only those who dare observe closely could witness. The ladder of horrors and choices that awaits us is deeper than any tattoo, more complex than any prison, and more revealing than we can imagine. The first sight that struck him as he entered the prison yard was almost cinematic. The tattoo across his chest, a tangle of black and red lines, seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a silent language of hatred and obsession. It was impossible to look and not feel the weight, as if each line contained decisions, memories, and accumulated pain, revealing fragments of the mindset of someone who had already decided to cross all lines. The bridge between body and mind became immediate. Each mark was a map of impulses, choices, and violence about to be unveiled. The visual impact was only the first step, a silent provocation that made the air around him seem denser, heavier, as if the prison corridors had absorbed all the shadows of those acts previously committed. The story unfolding there was not linear, it was a spiral of actions and consequences, each layer more disturbing than the last. He was known for transforming each crime into a psychological spectacle, a work that left traces both visible and invisible. The first incident involving that tattooed body was brutal in its simplicity. A betrayal, a revenge that could not wait, and an act as calculated as it was merciless. Every detail of the crime seemed to reflect the tattoo, every bloody gesture echoed the designs he wore, creating an intimate link between identity, desire, and action. Witnesses spoke of swift movements, instant decisions, of a mind that navigated chaos with surgical precision. And yet, there was something deeper, something that transcended the physical, a hidden truth that only slowly revealed itself to those who dared to observe. The trial was an extension of the spectacle he had already begun inside the cell. The ink lines now became silent evidence, a symbol that everyone could interpret but no one truly understood. The press, fascinated and horrified, delved behind the scenes, exploring every detail, every revelation that might fuel the tattooed monster's narrative. And while he remained unfazed, every word spoken in court seemed chosen for impact, a demonstration of control, a reminder that the mind can manipulate perception, even when the body is chained. And then, as if the story needed to evolve, the third case became even darker. The tattoo covering his arms and neck became a living narrative, symbols of pacts, of deaths, of pain inflicted and received. Every crime he committed was an extension of that bodily expression, every decision an echo of what was etched beneath his skin. The brutality escalated, not only in physical violence but in psychological complexity. He didn't just act, he challenged, questioned limits, turning each act into a study of impact and consequences. Fear spread through the eyes of other inmates, but also through the way the outside world, even through the news, began to understand the scope of his actions. The effect of the tattoos was not only symbolic but contagious. Other inmates began to react differently. Some moved away, sensing the intensity of a mind determined not to be understood. Others approached, fascinated by this display of control and transformation, trying to absorb some of the decisions, some fragment of the hidden truth he seemed to carry like a shield. Every interaction, every whisper in the hallways, became part of the larger narrative, a silent backdrop that shaped mindsets and altered perceptions. And of course, the escalation didn't stop at the visible brutality. It was also in the intimacy of the choices, in the way each victim was selected, each crime planned, every detail of the execution calculated to create maximum repercussion. Each tattoo, each line of ink, functioned as a diary, a map, and a warning. And as one observed, the sensation was of being confronted with something more than simple violence. It was a profound study of mind and body, a transformation that manifested itself in every gesture and every decision. And as the third case unfolded, more intense than the last, more disturbing, more complex, the realization that each crime is merely a layer of something much larger became inescapable. The tattoo lines were not just marks, but shortcuts to understanding a mind navigating chaos with frightening clarity, revealing truths no one outside the prison could fully access. If the first tattoo spoke of contained hatred and the second showed the expansion of that terror, the third represented complete transformation. Body, mind, and actions intertwined in a spiral of chaos and control that knew no bounds. Every detail promised that what came next would be even more intense, even more impactful, even more profound, leaving the feeling that the story not only continued, but that the hidden truth deepened with every passing moment, testing the limits of understanding, courage, and the very perception of reality. As we move toward the story's climax, the pace deliberately slows, almost hypnotic, as if each word were a whisper echoing through the dark corridors of the viewer's mind. The tattoo ceases to be just a drawing, a mark on the body. It transforms into something deeper, a symbol charged with worship and devotion, a kind of religion of evil that imposes itself with the intensity of an archetype. It's impossible to separate the skin from the myth, the ink from the psychological impact it provokes. Each black line seems to breathe, each bloody curve seems to pulse with the story of destroyed lives, decisions made on the edge of instinct, and a mentality that transcends simple comprehension. When observing figures like Ramirez, Manson, and other icons who have become near legends within the darkness, the feeling that we are facing something greater than crime becomes inescapable. These are not just isolated acts, not just murders or devastation. They are manifestations of an internal transformation that has taken over body, mind, and soul, converting them into symbols of power, fear, and fascination. It is a hidden truth that only reveals itself to those who allow themselves to look deeper, to those unafraid to face the lethal combination of obsession and perverse creativity. Each tattoo of these individuals functions as a reliquary, a map of decisions, a reflection of the mentality that shaped not only the crimes but also the cultural impact they carry. The narrative unfolds in layers. First the image, then the story behind it, and finally the meaning it carries for those who observe it, whether inside the prison or in the outside world. The psychological effect is devastating. It's not just fear that takes hold, but a silent fascination, an almost irrational curiosity that invites the viewer to try to understand the incomprehensible. Every gesture, every sentence uttered, every confession whispered before the execution or during the trials adds a new dimension to the archetype's complexity. It's as if we are witnessing a silent ritual, a liturgy of shadows that slowly reveals itself, and which is only fully understood when we accept that crime, for these icons, was merely an extension of the ultimate expression of their inner transformation. Within this context, the tattoo becomes a catalyst for worship and the cult of one's own image. Whether it's an abstract design, a symbol of hate, or even words forcibly engraved on the flesh, it all communicates. The mind that conceived it, the mindset that allowed such extreme decisions to be made, is revealed in every detail. And the impact is profound. Those who encounter the tattoo, whether another inmate, an investigator, or the public through the images and accounts, see not only the crime, they see the living story of a transformation that defies morality and understanding. As each case surpasses the previous, the spiral of horror and fascination intensifies. There is no simple sequence of events. There is a complex web of choices, traumas, and revelations. And it is precisely at this point that the viewer feels they are confronted with something greater, an archetype that resonates far beyond flesh and blood, a representation of absolute power, psychological impact, and control over the perception of others. The tattoo thus becomes a secret code, a legacy of fear that spans time, connecting the living to the dead through the narrative it carries. And in this atmosphere, it's impossible not to notice that every detail, every gesture, every revealed shadow is an invitation to delve deeper. Each account, every image, every fragment of confession connects to the behind the scenes, to hidden truths, to the decisions that shape not only the criminal's trajectory but also the collective perception of what it means to face human darkness head-on. It's a space where curiosity, horror, and fascination coexist, where the viewer's mind is challenged to decipher the archetype's complexity, to feel the impact of a transformation that goes far beyond the physical. And it is in this tension-filled silence that we realize, it's not just about understanding the crime, but about understanding the ritual, the liturgy of evil that manifests itself through the tattoo, the action, the mind. The horror is hypnotic, the narrative captivating, and each revealed fragment sets the stage for something even more intense, deeper, more disturbing, leaving the viewer on the brink of a revelation that approaches, but never fully materializes, as if the hidden truth were always just a step beyond reach, waiting to be unveiled. And as you feel the weight of these stories, the intensity of the mind that transformed crimes into legends, I need you to stay with me. Stay with me until the end, because what is yet to emerge is not just another story, it is a truth that few have had the courage to face. Every confession, every tattoo, every gesture whispered before death has layers that only reveal themselves if you stay here, with open attention, unafraid to look at what would normally be hidden. If you subscribe now, it's not just a click. It's a silent commitment to the unknown, ensuring that each next revelation, each fragment of hidden truth, reaches you intact, uncensored, unfiltered. The channel grows with those who allow themselves to dive in, who understand that each story doesn't end where you think, that there's always something more to discover, something that stirs your mind, your memory, the sense of security you thought you had. Your registration isn't just a digital gesture. It's a way to be part of a group that sees what many avoid. It's recognizing that to understand the depths of a dark mind's transformation, you need to be present, witnessing every step, every decision, every revelation that, however disturbing, brings understanding to the complexity of evil, to the impact certain actions have on the world and on the people who cross its paths. Imagine that each click is like turning on a small light within the darkness. With each subscription, each viewer who joins this narrative, we are able to keep alive the space where these stories can be told, where the hidden truth doesn't disappear into the shadows, but becomes something everyone can feel, reflect on, and discuss, unfiltered, without moderation. It's pure reciprocity. You give us attention, we give you access to a universe few have the courage to explore, and which remains alive and vibrant as long as you choose to be here. Stay with me until the end, not as a request, but as an invitation to cross the line between the known and the forbidden. Because each next moment holds a piece of the puzzle, A detail that changes the way you see the stories we tell, the intensity of the impact they provoke, and the way we understand the minds that shape these narratives. If you allow yourself, subscribe, become part of this space, you not only follow, you participate, you keep alive the channel, the memory of these stories, and the power to reveal what the world tries to hide. And as the darkness deepens, each case, each tattoo, each whisper before execution, all of it connects, and you here with me become part of what remains, of what slowly reveals itself, and of what is yet to come. Don't lose the thread that connects each piece. Each click is a link, each inscription a silent promise that nothing will be lost. What comes next is bigger than you imagined, more disturbing than seemed possible, and you'll want to see every detail. So stay with me until the end. He was just another face in the crowd when he entered the prison, but every inch of his skin told a story no one would dare hear without shuddering. The tattoo on his right arm wasn't just ink. It was a map of decisions, of choices that shaped the mind, of moments of rupture that transformed a life into a narrative of terror. Observing it was like leafing through a diary written with pain, anger, and obsession. Some inmates passed him by with disdain, others whispered names, stories, and fears, and some stopped, trapped, unable to look away. It was physical proof that actions leave marks far beyond the body, an extension of the psychological impact he had left on the world, a legacy that would live on even after his voice was silenced. The story hidden behind the skin is not limited to violence. It reveals transformations, behind-the-scenes events that rarely appear on the surface, the way seemingly small choices lead to an impact that expands beyond the individual. As he walked through the prison corridors, his every step reverberated like an echo from the past, and the tattoo became more than a personal symbol. It assumed the function of a message, a silent warning, a cult of the very shadow he carried. Other inmates watched, trying to decipher it, sometimes inspired, sometimes terrified. The mentality imprinted in the lines and colors wasn't limited to the criminal. It spread, touched, and transformed everyone who crossed its path. It was the manifestation of a legacy of fear, but also a living narrative about how human decisions create invisible chains that connect victims, perpetrators, and witnesses to the same dark cycle. And the ink on his skin didn't age like his body. It was eternal. Every scratch, every line, every shadow captured an essence that not even death could erase. He knew it. Perhaps he even wished it were so. A scar that survives, that doesn't dissolve into history like so many other forgotten crimes. It became collective memory, a legend that permeates walls, muffled screams, and surveillance cameras. The tattoo became a sign. Here was someone who changed lives, someone who defied limits, and whose impact wasn't limited to what he had done, but to what society would bear forever. Between behind-the-scenes and fragmented accounts, secrets that never made the headlines, decisions that altered trajectories, the tattoo served as a silent witness. Each color told a story, each shadow a choice. The mind that conceived these crimes left its mark not only on victims and families, but on culture, in the memories of those who heard, saw, and felt them. And even when the criminal disappeared from view, what he left imprinted on them remained. The sense that there was something greater, something that went beyond flesh and blood, an indelible mark on the collective imagination. In the silence of the cells, the tattoo pulsed. The corridors were silent witnesses, but those who looked closely could perceive the narrative hidden behind the drawing. The horror, the obsession, the repetition of patterns, the transformation of traumas into decisions that would echo long afterward. It wasn't just about violence. It was the study of effect, the legacy of choices that materialize, and the realization that some marks are not merely superficial. They become part of culture, become references, spread fear, but also curiosity and to some extent, fascination. The last case we'll examine has this same depth. A tattoo isn't just skin. It's a silent manifesto, a reliquary of intentions, memories, and consequences that no one would dare to confront without a chill down their spine. To look at it is to understand the power a human decision can have on the world around it. Every detail, every shadow, every stroke, every fragment of ink carries stories that transcend the criminal and reach the echoes of what endures. Fear, memory, and the impact that transcend time. And so, as he walks among the others, invisible to the eyes of those who merely see, the tattoo continues to speak, telling hidden truths, provoking reflection on mindset, transformation, choices, and consequences. It is the legacy of fear that does not dissolve, and that even when all seems quiet, still reverberates in the imagination, culture, and perception of all who dare to look more closely. Every line of skin is a warning, every shadow a testimony. What remains, after all, is much more than the body or the crime. It is the eternal scar that connects past, present, and collective memory, and that silently prepares us for what comes next. The tattoo was just the tip of the iceberg. Every line, every shadow, every contour was as if the mind itself had poured itself onto the skin, transforming pain, anger, and obsession into something visible, palpable. And as the guards circulated the corridors and the routine seemed to follow its monotonous rhythm, there was something almost sacred in the way the other inmates looked at him. Reverence, fear, curiosity, perhaps even silent envy. The tattoo not only represented crimes, but encapsulated decisions, thoughts, and transformations that occurred long before the blood touched the ground. It was a living record of what the human mind is capable of when fueled by hatred, frustration, or ambition. Each tattoo that appears in the context of these stories carries a hidden truth, a behind-the-scenes story that rarely makes the headlines but is essential to deciphering the pattern of behavior, the mentality that shapes the silent terror that spans decades. His life inside the prison had become a study in transformation. Where once there had been only isolation and threat, now there was legend, cult, and veiled reverence. The tattoo became a symbol of authority, not formal, but visceral. Other inmates followed inspired patterns, consciously or not, and even visitors sensed the aura of something that transcended the simple concept of crime. It was the materialization of psychological impact, a continuous narrative that spread without the need for words, conveyed through the gaze, the silence, the tension that filled every corridor, every cell, every moment of forced coexistence. As he walked, every detail of the tattoo seemed to come to life, telling its own story, revealing past decisions and inevitable consequences. It was like looking at an encyclopedia of violence and obsession, but also of transformation and mentality. The colors, the symbols, the irregular lines carried revelations that could only be grasped by those who truly looked beyond the surface. And those who dared to look could no longer ignore what they saw. Body and mind fused into a narrative of silent terror, where each choice became a permanent scar, not only on the skin but in the collective imagination. And even with all the attention focused on him, there was something even deeper. The tattoos weren't just macabre art, but signs of connections, of inner pacts, of hidden truths that would never be fully revealed. They were portals to understanding the mind, to perceiving patterns, to recognizing how decisions, traumas, and obsessions can transform into lasting impacts, shaping mindsets, altering perceptions, and leaving marks that silently spread through the lives of all who cross paths with this legacy. The silence in the cell was almost palpable. Every gesture, every movement, every look carried weight and meaning. The tattoo bore witness to stories that would never be told, to secrets that remain hidden, to truths that disturb even the most skeptical. And as the hours dragged on, it became clear that what he left behind was not just fear, but a form of subterranean culture. An echo that reverberates in the decisions, transformations, and behind-the-scenes lives of all who come close, conscious or not, to what it represents. The marks imprinted on the skin spoke of a mindset that transcends the individual, of choices that reverberate, of stories that become archetypes of evil. Every shadow, every curve, every tattooed word was a reminder that human violence goes far beyond the act itself. It creates legacies, provokes reflection, transforms perceptions, and keeps alive echoes that never completely dissipate. What remains is more than a memory, it is a cultural scar, a mark of impact and transformation, a reminder that what is visible on the surface is only part of a larger enigma. These are just a few of the marks revealed. But in the shadows of prisons, there are still tattoos that tell stories no one dares to hear. Stories hidden in the cells, in the corridors, in the silent walls that hold secrets and hidden truths, where every trace can reveal decisions, every shadow can contain distorted minds, and every symbol can transform fear into a legacy. What is yet to come is deeper, darker, more hypnotic, something that challenges not only comprehension but the very sense of security, of reality, and leaves an echo impossible to ignore, suggesting that even when we think we've seen it all, there is still more to discover, more to feel, and more to comprehend in the abyss that human beings are capable of creating and immortalizing. If you've made it this far, it means you've wanted to face what few dare to look at head-on. Do you feel the weight of that? The story doesn't end with what's been revealed, it continues in what's hidden, in the shadows no one talks about. So, make a simple gesture. Leave a comment saying, "I'm with you until the end." That way I know you've truly allowed yourself to delve into this spiral of forbidden truths, fear, and revelations. And if this dive touched you, hit like. It's not just a click, it's a sign that we're together in this search, in this silent investigation of what human beings are capable of carrying in their skin, in their minds, in silence. It's emotional justice, it's contained revolt, it's belonging to a group that refuses to let stories like this disappear. Stay with me. Subscribe. Not out of obligation, but because every story we're yet to reveal needs someone who sees it, who feels it, who understands the complexity behind every crime, every tattoo, every secret that becomes a legacy. This is where continuity is valuable, and your presence ensures that nothing gets lost along the way. And to keep the tension alive, there's a video here to complement everything you just saw. Click and stay with me there, because there the shadows deepen, the symbols become even more disturbing, and you'll begin to realize that what seemed like the limit is just the surface of what still exists behind prison walls, behind human decisions and the scars that time has failed to erase. Follow, feel, comment, and dive even deeper. Because whoever makes it to the end here doesn't leave the same.